While most Americans were focused on the latest iPhone release or Tesla's stock price, a seismic shift was quietly unfolding across the Pacific, one that could fundamentally alter who controls America's energy future. China didn't just become the world's factory, it systematically engineered itself into what experts now call an energy OPEC, wielding unprecedented control over the minerals and technologies that power our electric dreams. And the most shocking part? Even Elon Musk's Tesla, the company that promised to revolutionize American transportation, finds itself increasingly at the mercy of this new energy superpower. The numbers tell a story that should concern every American. China doesn't just mine lithium or cobalt. It processes a staggering 81% of the world's critical minerals on average. To put this in perspective, when OPEC controlled oil markets in the 1970s, they never achieved this level of dominance over a single resource, let alone an entire category of materials essential to modern civilization. China processes 95% of the world's manganese and graphite, 73% of cobalt, and 68% of nickel. These aren't just statistics. They're the building blocks of every electric vehicle battery, every smartphone, and every renewable energy system America hopes to build. But here's where the story gets truly fascinating, and frankly, a bit unsettling. This isn't accidental market dominance. This is strategic brilliance executed over decades. Back in 1992, Deng Xiaoping made a prophetic declaration. The Middle East has its oil, China has rare earths. While American policymakers were celebrating the end of the Cold War and assuming free markets would naturally distribute global production, Chinese leadership was quietly implementing a comprehensive strategy to control the entire supply chain of the energy transition. The data shows that China's approach differs fundamentally from traditional resource extraction models. Instead of simply digging materials out of the ground, Chinese companies built an integrated ecosystem controlling every stage, from mining to manufacturing. Contemporary Amperex technology, better known as CATL, exemplifies this approach perfectly. This single Chinese company now holds a 35% global market share in lithium-ion batteries. To understand the scale here, imagine if one American company controlled over a third of global oil refining. That's the level of concentration we're dealing with. For Tesla, this reality has translated into a brutal market awakening. The company that once dominated China's premium electric vehicle market has watched its market share collapse from nearly 19% in July 2024 to just 4% by August 2025. Tesla sold approximately 63,000 units in China last August, representing a 17% decline year-over-year. Meanwhile, Chinese automaker BYD maintained a commanding 28% market share, while simultaneously expanding globally. The reversal is so dramatic, it's almost surreal. The American company that promised to lead the electric revolution is being systematically outcompeted in the world's largest EV market by companies most Americans have never heard of. The impact extends far beyond Tesla's stock price or Elon Musk's Twitter commentary. Major American automakers like Ford and General Motors have entered into licensing agreements with CATL, essentially admitting they cannot compete without Chinese battery technology. Ford's $3 billion battery plant in Marshall, Michigan, represents the first automaker-backed lithium iron phosphate battery facility in the United States, but it relies entirely on CATL's licensed technology. General Motors announced in August 2025 that it would temporarily import batteries directly from CATL for its new Chevrolet Bolt, despite facing 30% tariffs on Chinese imports. These arrangements reveal a fundamental paradox at the heart of American industrial policy. U.S. automakers cannot compete in the electric vehicle market without Chinese technology, yet political tensions and trade restrictions make such partnerships increasingly precarious. Lisa Drake, Ford's vice president of technology platform programs, defended the decision by arguing that it's hard to innovate something when you've never seen it with your own eyes. This admission essentially acknowledges that American companies lack the fundamental expertise to develop competitive battery technology independently. A sobering reality for a nation that once led global automotive innovation. The scope of American dependence becomes even more apparent when examining the broader supply chain. The Inflation Reduction Act requires that 40% of critical minerals in EV batteries come from the United States or free trade partners to qualify for tax credits. However, this requirement has proven nearly impossible to meet given China's processing dominance. Even when minerals are mined in friendly countries like Australia or Canada, they typically must pass through Chinese refineries before becoming usable in batteries.
China doesn't need to
This creates what
invade
industry experts call
Taiwan or
choke points
threaten
in
trade
global supply
routes to
chains,
cripple
where China can
American
effectively control the
industry.
flow of materials regardless of their origin. China has begun wielding this supply chain dominance as a geopolitical weapon, implementing export restrictions that mirror its rare earth export controls of 2010. In July 2025, China introduced new licensing requirements for 8 key technologies used in EV battery manufacturing, effectively requiring government approval for any overseas transfer of critical battery production knowledge. These restrictions target technologies for producing battery cathode materials and processing non-ferrous metals essential to battery production. The timing wasn't coincidental. These controls coincided with escalating trade tensions and represented China's response to U.S. tariffs and technology restrictions. The market manipulation tactics China employs are sophisticated and ruthless. The lithium market provides a clear example of this strategy in action. Prices crashed over 80% from 2022 peaks, falling from approximately $80,000 per ton to around $6,500 per ton by early 2025. This price collapse rendered many Western lithium operations unprofitable, despite growing demand, effectively consolidating Chinese control over the market. Similarly, Chinese market manipulation contributed to the closure of all Australian nickel mines in the past 2 years, including BHP's suspension of operations at its Nickel West facilities until at least 2027. For the United States, this represents more than an economic challenge. It's a question of national security and technological sovereignty. The Biden administration recognized the strategic threat and invested over $120 billion in battery and critical mineral supply chains, providing $2.8 billion in grants to 21 processing and recycling projects through the bipartisan infrastructure law. However, these efforts have been undermined by regulatory obstacles and continued Chinese market manipulation. The administration blocked several critical mineral mining projects in 2023, including copper and gold in Alaska, copper and nickel in Minnesota, and radionuclides in Arizona. The competitive disadvantage extends beyond policy to fundamental economics. Building an LFP battery plant costs $865 million in the United States compared to $650 million in China, reflecting higher construction, equipment, and regulatory costs. These structural disadvantages make it difficult for American manufacturers to achieve cost parity, even with substantial government support. Chinese manufacturers can offer vehicles under $10,000 in some segments in China, compared to Tesla's Model 3 base price of $42,990 in the United States. Meanwhile, Chinese automakers are rapidly expanding beyond their domestic market, leveraging their cost advantages and technological capabilities to capture market share globally. BYD alone captured 31% of the Chinese market in 2024, while simultaneously expanding internationally, with projected 45% growth in global EV sales for 2025. In Latin America, Chinese brands accounted for 82% of battery electric vehicle sales in 2024 across Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. In Southeast Asia, Chinese manufacturers achieved an 85% market share in battery electric vehicle sales. Tesla's response appears focused on developing new manufacturing approaches, including the planned Depop Model Y, designed to reduce production costs by 20% through simplified configurations and large castings. However, this approach still relies on Chinese-controlled supply chains for critical components, limiting its effectiveness in reducing overall cost disadvantages. The company's expansion into robotaxis and autonomous driving represents an attempt to differentiate beyond traditional automotive metrics. But Chinese competitors like BYD and Xiaomi are simultaneously advancing in artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. The broader implications for American economic security cannot be overstated. China's dominance in critical minerals processing, combined with its manufacturing scale and technological integration, creates sustainable competitive advantages that traditional trade policies cannot easily address. The country possesses 893 gigawatt-hours of battery manufacturing capacity as of 2022, representing 77% of global capacity, projected to grow to 6,197 gigawatt-hours by 2027, while maintaining a commanding 69% market share. This isn't just about cars or batteries. It's about who controls the technologies that will define the 21st century economy. The clean energy transition represents the largest industrial transformation since the advent of fossil fuels, and China has positioned itself to be the primary beneficiary. While American companies focused on quarterly earnings and stock buybacks, Chinese firms invested in the long-term infrastructure needed to dominate emerging industries. The challenge facing American policymakers and business leaders is unprecedented. Unlike previous industrial competitions where the United States could leverage superior technology or capital markets, China's integrated approach spans the entire value chain from raw materials to finished products. The licensing arrangements between Ford, GM, and CATL represent a pragmatic acknowledgement of technological gaps, but they also create long-term strategic vulnerabilities that could persist for decades. Current American efforts to build domestic alternatives show promise, but remain insufficient to challenge China's structural advantages. The fragmented approach across multiple agencies and programs lacks the coordinated strategy that characterizes Chinese efforts. While individual programs have achieved success, the absence of comprehensive industrial policy has limited their collective impact. So the real question isn't whether this shift will happen. It's whether America is prepared to confront it. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new era where China's energy OPEC fundamentally reshapes global power dynamics? Or can American innovation and determination still forge a path to energy independence? The next few years will likely determine whether the United States remains a leader in the industries of tomorrow, or becomes a dependent customer of Chinese technological dominance. What do you think? Is this the kind of future America should embrace or fear?